Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to 5 idioms I only picked up after moving to America. And what is an idiom? I think it's, God, I should probably know. I think it's like a way of phrasing something. So it's like, you'll use just, I'm not going to explain it. I think I know what it is. I don't know. A spanner, is it like a spanner in the works? Something like that. A group of words established by usage as having a meaning not. Well, this doesn't fucking help me. Over the moon. Oh, okay. Okay, so it's a word. Okay, so it is pretty much that. I don't really. Do I ever say anything? I guess it's like a pinch of salt. I'll take that with a pinch of salt, stuff like that, or yeah, just things like that, I guess. But specific ones just to the US, I don't really know what I could think of. But maybe if I hear them, I'll have heard them. When he says them, I'll have heard them from shows and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. But we're going to jump into this and see.
A wrench in the works is when something is...
A wrench in the works? Is that the American way of saying it? Wait, is spanner a thing in the US? I think a spanner is what a wrench is in the US, which is probably the difference.
Going really swimmingly, like, for example, one of Lawrence's videos. And then the main audio cuts out and nobody knows what to do, not even my technicians, because I don't have any. Hello, this video is sponsored by the Great Courses Plus. I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to idioms. American idioms. There are so many of them that Green Day almost wrote an entire album about them. But what is an idiom? An idiom is a phrase or expression that typically presents a non-literal meaning. So, for example, don't count your chickens before they hatch because, you know, there might be twins. This isn't us telling farmers how to do their jobs. We're saying, don't get ahead of yourself, without saying, don't get ahead of yourself. The US has given the world a lot of idioms, and before Uncle Toby comes at me in all caps, many American idioms like on the bandwagon or bet your bottom dollar have indeed made their way to Britain. On the other hand, some have only entered my vocab after 12 years living in the United States, and that's what happens when you live in another country, even when you're a YouTube sensation. Dialectal properties enter your brain through what seems like osmosis until you can no longer remember a time that you didn't use them. This is true of idioms. The idea for this video came from Carrie, not the book by Stephen King, but one of my patrons during this week's secret live stream. And so with that in mind, here are 5 idioms I now use without even thinking about it, thanks to Americans.
Dimmy a dozen? What?
One thing my linguistic brain really noticed after moving to America is that Americans really love idioms about money, and that makes sense because, you know, capitalism. So you've got bottom dollar, or I feel like $1 million.
Yeah,
or,
I know that one.
Lawrence, can I borrow $127? That wasn't an idiom, that was just a request from Randy Quaid. But the one that I've picked up and that I use all the time, probably because I'm really opinionated, is dime a dozen.
Oh, dime a dozen, not dimmy. I thought it was 2 M's that you put.
Dime a dozen, what does that mean? Are we going shopping for eggs? No, it just means that something is so common as to be worthless. For example, I once noted that there were an inordinate number of YouTube channels hosted by men with beards. And all I could think was, you all look the same! And where are those men now? We're a dime a dozen. There, I said it, right? We are the eggs of YouTube, and inside those eggs are knowledge, but also lots of yolk. That, please don't read too much into that. And if you crack us hard enough, that knowledge will pour out as it's doing in the form of a YouTube video. I've no idea what I'm talking about, but I do know this much. The term dime a dozen does come from the sale of eggs. It was a much simpler time in the 19th century when eggs just cost a dime. And so to represent, I suppose, the widespread prevalence of eggs, this idiom fell into use in the 1930s. I can't say for sure whether or not it did spread to England and I just happened to not encounter it. My feeling is it probably did not, just because we don't have dime as part of our currency.
I don't even know what dime is. I've heard the term, but dime a dozen. I guess it's just a way of referring to money, right? Where have I heard dime from?
Then again, we don't have dollar, but we do have bottom dollar, but we're obsessed with bottoms, so it could be something to do with that. Something else I've learned is that American idioms, as well as containing language pertaining to money, often contain language pertaining to sport. And
What? So that's an idiom as well. I see. I thought I always, when I first got this, I was thinking it was like you use an item as the idiom, but all bets are off. That would be considered one as well.
sometimes, in rare instances, they have both. One such instance is the phrase, all bets are off. So what do I mean when I say that all bets are off? Why have I come to say?
Wait, I feel like I've heard that phrase, but all bets are off the table or something like that. Is it? Off the table? So is this just a... Where have I got the table bit from then? What the fuck? A situation in which it's impossible to be sure about what will happen. All bets are off. I've heard it with all bets are off the table, but I've never heard it just like that. I mean, I probably have, but...
Say it. Well, it basically means that things have become so unpredictable that at this point, anything could happen. For example, you, the viewer, probably used to think, Lawrence Brown, he's a human being, only in this video, I learned he's a metaphorical egg. And wait a minute, while that does sound odd, it does lend credence to the idea that he is America's finest British import. And doing a quick bit of reading into the history of this phrase, it dates back to horse racing bets. In other words, the bookmaker is not taking any more bets at this time, and all existing bets placed on the competition are now null and void. And I think it's fair to say that all bets are off as to where this video goes from here, because, admittedly, most of my ideas come from this.
Out of left
There
field.
are just some phrases
Is that referring to sports, I guess? Maybe American football?
you're gonna pick up while working in an office in corporate America, or while manning the hot dog stand at Wrigley Field. They only kept me on for 2 weeks. And while I've worked hard to let go of workplace jargon since leaving the corporate arena, or Captain Joe's, there are some phrases that still slip through, and one of those is out of left field. Now, out of left field can be used outside of the workplace, and commonly is. It just happens to be a phrase that I picked up there. And I can't decide if it's because managers routinely use that phrase about my contribution to the company, or if, no, it's because they routinely use that phrase about my contributions to the company. What does it mean? Well, it means an idea, concept, or comment that just sort of came out of nowhere. Good example, I was watching one of Lawrence's videos and then just out of left field, he bombarded me with Randy Quaid references. This is normal in my house. I mean, you must spend about 5 minutes a day discussing the partial filmography of Randy Quaid, otherwise you haven't lived. Can I inquire, has Randy Quaid ever been in a baseball film? Because I kind of want to tie this back at the end. Yeah. Okay, what about Dennis Quaid? 2002's The Rookie. I've never heard of it, but we'll go with that. But this isn't all out of left field, because Dennis Quaid, who I've been referencing this entire time, was in 2002's The Rookie, a film about baseball. And by an extraordinary coincidence, the term out of left field is thought to have originated in baseball.
Oh,
I mean, its origins have never actually been confirmed, but come on, it makes more sense than the actual rules of baseball. A person out in left field throws the ball, thus catching the runner by surprise and knocking him out. Baseball, of course, America's pastime. I bet it wouldn't be, though, if they replaced the bat with one of these.
10-foot pole.
And that's because it would be...
So this is in the thumbnail, but I have no idea what this is. This is probably the first one that I've definitely not heard at all. Actually, the first one I haven't heard either.
Stupid. So this is where things get a little convoluted. When I lived in Britain, I would never have said, I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole, because what's a 10-foot pole? But I would have used, and did use on many an occasion, a variation on this phrase. That variation was, I wouldn't touch that with a barge pole. What is a barge pole? I guess it's a pole for pushing barges along. And barges are a big thing in Britain, so it makes sense. But I think if you start using that term here, people might look at you like you're not real, like you're a metaphorical egg. I'm going to stop with that now. And I suppose to ward off any awkwardness or follow-up questions, I adapted my language to say 10-foot pole. But I still don't know what one of those is. Clearly it's a pole that's 10 feet, but what's it used for? Well, I looked into the memory banks of Earth and found this. Many believe this expression originates from a burial practice in New Orleans. The Spanish-developed burial system of present day proceeds by first placing the casket of the patron in an above-ground tomb. Exactly 1 year and 1 day after burial, the tomb is opened and the casket removed. The body is next wrapped in a sheet and shoved to the bottom of the tomb using a 10-foot pole. I wouldn't touch that, thus making the figurative literal. Thankfully, a 10-foot pole can't come between me and my nerdy love of language. At this point, I'm just in too deep. Whether you've been following my channel for a few weeks or a few centuries, you've probably detected my unwavering interest in the United States. And this has always extended to language. In fact, during my English language degree, while learning about syntax, lexicology, and the mouth structure of parrots, I always really wanted to do a module on American English, how it came to be, why it differed from my own variety, and why Pittsburgh did its own thing. Now, thanks to the Great Courses Plus,
we got his ads. Come on.
Can all do that.
This is from years ago, so it's probably not in place now, but he got his money.
After moving into a new apartment this year, this little thing proved handy, and I do mean little.
So that is, a wrench is the way of saying spanner in the UK.
Now, ordinarily, of course, it's used for tightening or loosening bolts, but it's also used in an idiom. And that idiom is to throw a wrench in the works. What would give Lawrence, a man filled with optimism and a can-do attitude, cause to use it? Well, firstly, this was a phrase that I used back in Britain. What? Why is it in this video then, you plonker? Because it was this phrase, only substituting the word wrench for what we call this, a spanner. And so, as with 10-foot pole, I found myself going the American way so as to avoid throwing a wrench in the works. A wrench in the works is when something is going really swimmingly, like, for example, one of Lawrence's videos, and then the main audio cuts out and nobody knows what to do, not even my technicians, because I don't have any. And then the video goes from being a 10 out of 10 to a 9.5, and we can't have that. That's it for this episode. Thank you for watching today, and
it's interesting how it is
the
the same saying though, but it's just obviously it is a different word, but how it did cross over. But it's just I guess we ended up changing. I don't know where it would have come from initially, but we or the US ended up changing that one word, but it means the same thing. Idioms. It's quite cool to see this. Let me just search typical British idioms that you probably wouldn't get in the US. Maybe a penny for your thoughts makes sense. A penny's a currency. Actions speak louder than words. Yep, an arm and a leg. Back in the drawing bag. Is the one don't break a leg a saying as well? Or what is it? Or break a leg saying? Is that like good luck? Yeah, it's good luck. See, that's one that I actually do know. I never said it before, I just know it. The ball is in your court. So that's like when you're like the one to make the decisions, right? Or you're in charge or whatever. Beating around the bush. Typical. I don't know why I took all that away. US idioms. Good things come to those who wait. Bigger fish to fry. I do know that one. Is a chip off the old block. Hit the nail on the head. Yeah. Idioms are interesting, actually. I never looked into them, but they are quite a fascinating thing how they even just come into play. I mean, I don't really speak with idioms, but I mean, you know them and you hear about them. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this reaction. If you want more of this stuff, I don't know if there's any more on this stuff, to be honest. Let me know. And yeah, let me know some of your favourite idioms that you use on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, until next time, like, subscribe. Peace.